Hello, everyone. Thank you again for tuning into another Mind Matters with K podcast. Today I have Stephany Ann from Oregon. Hi, Stephany.
Hi, thank you for
How,
having me tonight.
of course, of
I'm
course.
doing
Thank you
well.
for, I know I was running a little late today. I thank you for being flexible. I 100% appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. So we spoke a little bit about your story. You have a very intriguing story, one that I think that a lot of people can benefit from because we never know who's going through what, right? So just when we have these
Yeah,
conversations, we kind of detail the things that we went through, how we've overcome. It's empowering and uplifting to, some people who are maybe filling those shoes. So if you're fine with it, let's just dive right on in.
yeah, of course. So, for years, I felt like I was living a completely different story, a story through a lens of why me, you know, why me? And only recently do I feel like I've actually have broken this pattern of
Mhm.
calling people into my life through relationships that would that would teach me the lessons I still needed to learn about owning this as my story. I think sometimes we all come to a point in our life where we reflect and we look back on our story, and some of us have hard stories. They're hard to own. And
Yes.
my story was very hard to own. I didn't want to own my story. Um,
Mhm.
and so, I really had to sit with that and learn that this is my story and it's not someone else's story, but it's a story of healing those parts within me that kept me
Mhm.
feeling unworthy of love for so long that I would call people into my life that would reflect that back to me over
Mhm.
and over again, through their abusive words or through the feeling of never being enough, or for them through the ways that they would manipulate or the gaslighting.
Mhm.
These people would show up as exactly the teachers I needed at that moment. And
Right.
I can say that now, though for a long time I saw these two men who fit into um, this role as my husbands. I saw them as monsters for a very long time. And I would
Mhm.
continue to ask, why me? When I could look back, I see the lies, I see the deception, I see
Mhm.
everything that was going on. But
Mhm.
sometimes we get so caught up in our life that we don't realize that we're creating these situations, or we're allowing these situations to happen where we're actually being taken advantage of,
Right.
if that makes sense. But
Yeah.
I still feel like there was a part of me that was maybe still drawn to the drama, drawn to the story, drawn to the victimhood of what was happening to me
Right.
versus what I could see for me. And it
Mhm.
really wasn't until after 17 years within these two marriages, and my second marriage ended in violence,
Mhm.
where I found myself going blind in my eyes. And I really just had to sit there and say, what is going on? What is
Mm.
happening?
Right.
And um, and so, I spent so much time just saying, God, why me? I don't deserve this. Why me? I'm a good person. I did everything right. I was a good wife. I was a good mom. I went to college. I went to law school. I
Mhm.
traveled the world. I did all these things, yet all of this stuff was still happening to me. And it just felt like everything was out of my control.
Right.
And
Right.
so I was just sitting there like, oh, and, but here's the thing. I feel like in that moment, thinking about my eye and why I couldn't see and where did this come from? Like maybe there was a lesson here, a
Mhm.
lesson that I actually wasn't seeing my life clearly. And
Mhm.
so I think that God, divine source, spirit, whomever we resonate with, will give us these moments in time, whether it's through losing everything or through a physical manifestation like I had with my eye. And if we get curious and we get quiet and we ask the questions, we can see that there's some truth manifesting all around us.
Right.
And so for me, I literally wasn't able to see my story because I needed to see it through a different lens. I needed to shift from the victim story and become the heroine of my story. And when I was able to shift that energy from my exes being monsters in my life to being teachers, then I could start to see the lessons. And as I began to take my power back, I could see what needed to be healed. I could see what needed to be released, what needed to let go. And I could see where I needed more compassion in my life, more forgiveness in my life. But ultimately, I could see the patterns and the shifts in my story that I thought were my reality, and they weren't anymore. And
Right.
so as I look at so many people out there, listeners who are listening right now, men and women, because, it happens to all of us,
Right.
or it can. It's a pattern,
Right.
and how do we break this pattern?
So
And so,
if you
oh,
don't
go
mind,
ahead.
no, it's all right. So I know you said 2 marriages, right? So I mean, I want you to discuss what
Mm-hmm.
you feel comfortable discussing, but I know you said something to the you alluded to something with regards to them being narcissistic. Were they physical as well with you? Were they
Yeah.
emotionally
Yeah. So,
damaging?
yep. So if you look at, what narcissism is, so
Are you still there, Stephanie?
go. Oh, they
It's like
have
a really
this
bad connection.
preoccupation.
I'm sorry. Can you see me and hear me?
Oh, uh-huh. Yep.
There's like
Can
a
you see
really
me and
bad.
hear me?
Now I can. You went completely out. So
Okay.
could you repeat that?
Um, yeah. So I was just talking about like what narcissism is, just in
Mhm.
case there are listeners who don't know what narcissism is.
Okay.
So a narcissist is someone who is overly concerned and occupied with themselves. They want all this attention. They have this preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited power, beauty, wealth. They think
Mhm.
everyone wants to be them.
Yeah.
They have this need for excessive admiration, a sense of entitlement, and they exploit others to get everything they want. They will
Yeah.
manipulate. They will use gaslighting. They will do whatever they can to get all the attention, whether it's negative attention or positive attention. They're
Right.
arrogant. They're envious. And one of the myths is they come across as having this huge secure ego and self-esteem, but really the reality is they have some of the most fragile egos and fragile
Yes.
self-esteems.
Yes, they
So
do. Yes, they do.
there's yep. And there's different types of narcissists. So my first husband I was with for 14 years. He is a
Mhm.
covert narcissist, and which meant that he was very charming. They're all
Okay.
very charming. And he was involved in the church, in leadership, involved in the community. He everyone loved him. Oh, how could he be such a horrible person? He's so great. He's so wonderful. Oh, we love him.
Mhm.
He was in the healthcare. And so it's like, oh, he's such a great,
Oh yeah.
provider. We love him. But then at home, it was a completely different story. So he was not physically violent, but he was emotionally and psychologically. And he was a cheater. And here's one of it took me a really long time before I saw this. I always thought, sometimes we separate the two. Cheating's over here, domestic violence is over here.
Right.
I don't know if I don't know if I'm the only one who does this. I know I'm not. And so I never looked at that relationship as abuse. And here, my background in law, I was a domestic violence attorney. I was in the domestic violence field, and I did not see this as abuse because, if you think about it too, 20 plus years ago, domestic violence was really focused on the physical. We didn't always talk about the emotional and psychological abuse that we do now. We discuss it a lot more now, but then, and so, if you have a partner who isn't physically violent, but it's not right, because if you tell someone to stop doing something because it is hurting you, and they continue to do that, that's abuse.
Yeah.
And so when I didn't notice in the...
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh,
I was going to say, I didn't notice in the beginning. Okay. You know what? Can we hold on just for 1 second? I have kids in their bedrooms. Let me make sure they're not online with things.
All right.
If you don't. Okay, just give me a second here.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you for pausing with us for a second, everyone. Stephany had to go and do her mommy thing really quick. Before we pause it, I was going to say, I'm not exactly sure. I know you said you're from Oregon, and I know that each community is different in terms of what they identify as abuse or how they handle abuse. I know within the community I'm from, it was more so what happened in my house stayed in my house. So women pretty much stayed in these abusive relationships and weren't really able, in a sense, to talk about the abuse that they were enduring. So they used to have this shelter for battered women. That's what they used to call them back in the day, battered women and children. And it was like a bad thing. And it seemed like it was like shameful for them to discuss the fact that they've been, in these marriages with abusive men. So do you think that, that's why some people stay, because they feel like it's like shame on their marriage or shame within their family? Some ethnicities and religions have these arranged marriages. So there's a plethora of reasons why people stay. But what do you think? Why do you think people stay in these types of situations?
Yeah, in an abusive, narcissistic relationship, it usually takes a while before we even know what is going on. There's so much manipulation and gaslighting. And gaslighting is when someone tries to twist your words and twist your reality. And so you will know that a certain event happened, but then the abuser will convince you that it didn't happen the way you are imagining that it happened. Yes. And so even for me, with my background in domestic violence, my background as an attorney, I did not know I was in abusive relationships because I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't know what it was. And so that's one of the reasons why we stay too long, because we don't fully know what is happening, especially when it's the psychological, the emotional abuse. And so another reason is because of the trauma bond. And so in a narcissistic abusive relationship, when you first meet the person, you have what's called the honeymoon stage. And this is the phase where, it's the honeymoon. It's great. They are pretty much worshiping you.
Yep.
And does that not feel great? No, that is a wonder. It's a great feeling.
Right.
They put you on this pedestal. They tell you how much they love you, how much they value you, how important you are to them. You have a voice. I care about you. I love your family. I love your friends. With my second ex-husband, when I got into a relationship with him, he loved that I was a strong, independent woman. He loved that I was an attorney, and he loved my profession. He loved all my strong, independent women friends.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the honeymoon phase. And then they move to the devaluation phase. And that's where the criticisms come in, the critiques come in, the manipulation comes in, the gaslighting,
Mm-hmm.
and it becomes very confusing.
Yeah.
And so they may say something or criticize you, and they will apologize, but they're not apologizing because they're sorry. They are maybe throwing apologies out there because maybe they went too far.
Mm-hmm.
And then even my two ex-husbands just stopped apologizing for everything. They didn't apologize for anything.
Right.
And so what happens after the devaluation phase, then you have love bombing. They love bomb you back to where you feel comfortable with them again and vulnerable with them. And then once they get you feeling secure and everything's great in the relationship again, then they'll devalue you again. And it just repeats the cycle. And because of that, it's called a trauma bond. And it keeps you connected and bonded to this person in your trauma. Because you have that intermittent reinforcement of love and good times. Because if it was always horrible, we would all walk away right away.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not always horrible. And so it
It
keeps
seems
you
like
in that cycle. And so that's why a lot of people stay.
that's like master manipulation. Like it's kind of like the way you explained it. It's kind of like they're grooming you in the beginning. They're saying all the right words. They're doing all the right things to reel you in, and then once that hook is in you, they reel you back out. And like you said, the
Yes.
devaluation phase.
Yes.
That's insane. Like people have time
Yeah,
for that.
it is. Yes. Yes, they do. And it is insane. And we do call it a hook because they hook you.
Yeah.
And so when I met my second husband, I manifested him. I wrote out the list. How many of us have made that list? We want tall, dark, handsome, whatever's on our list.
Mm-hmm.
I put my list out there in the universe, and I met him a week later. He checked off every single thing, and I was very specific. Divorced dad, only with boys, tall, dark, handsome, not in the medical field, because medical field, they're all cheaters, something different. And I met him. And so in the beginning, when in this honeymoon phase, when he started saying stuff like, oh, we're soulmates, we're meant to be together, you're God's gift, that resonated because I had manifested him.
Right.
And in hindsight, I can say, yes, I got everything I wanted, plus all of the unhealed, unlearned lessons from my first marriage, because we will continue to get those until we break that pattern.
Yep.
And so, that's why people stay, because we know that, okay, it's going to be crappy right now, but it's going to be good in a couple days.
Right.
And then it's good for a couple days, and then it goes bad again, and then it goes good, and then it goes bad until you have the final discard.
Right. I think that people are, especially like you said in the beginning. So a lot of people hold on to the good times, when they are in the trauma phase or they're feeling devalued. I think that's what our minds do is latch on to the good times, and we're not really confronting the fact that this person is not treating us the way we deserve to be treated, and that this may not work. And Have you ever like sat with either husband? Had you ever sat down with them to tell them? Well, I know you said with your first husband you did, but with your second husband, did you ever sit to tell him, listen, this is not working for me. This is what I need. And, kind of put it in his lap for him to kind of correct it? And if you did, how did that go?
So I've done that multiple times, and so many other people that I speak with have also done it multiple times. And what they do is they manipulate the whole conversation. My second husband was a crier, and he could cry on demand. And so every time I would bring something up, like, you need to help me. I can't do all this stuff, or the way you're treating me is unacceptable. And he would just start crying and turn everything around to where he's the victim and I'm this mean person. And that's the gaslighting as well, And so and that's what they do. And they turn everything around to make you feel like you are a bad person. Like you're the one doing this. And so many of us were like, okay, well, maybe I need therapy. And so it was so confusing. And, and with him, all of this happened in 2020. And so it was, what was the chaos of 2020 just being, 2020? And what was truly who he was? I couldn't tell. Because for the first year of our dating and our relationship, he was wonderful.
But that's a long time to keep up an act. You know what I mean? Like a whole year, you have to present yourself as someone that you're not. Like his representative showed up basically for a whole year.
Yeah.
Right.
And well, and that's what they do.
Yeah.
They will act and play this part until you are hooked. And some of the ways they can hook you is one is the trauma bond, but two is marrying you or getting you pregnant. Yeah, it's a game. It is a game, a sick, disgusting game.
And it's dangerous. It's very, very dangerous as well. I've never dated a narcissist. I don't think I really know anyone that's a narcissist, but a really good friend of mine, she was married to one. And I actually met her at work. And, we kind of just bonded because of our positions. And, we just went from there. But some of the things that she used to show me in the emails and, because with the divorce, everything like had to literally be written down. They couldn't have no contact. She had a restraining order. It was insane. But just every little thing she said or did with the kids, he would manipulate it and tried to manipulate the court system. And so that was my bird's eye view to that. Like, that was my first introduction. I'm like, people really do this stuff? Like, do you really have time to sit there and manipulate someone's mind just to get what you want? Like, that's weird. So weird.
Yeah, no, it is. It is true. And it happens to so many people. And it's, and we can't figure them out. One of the things that I know my ex-husbands, they loved being a mystery. And every time I would start to figure them out, they would just switch and become a completely different person. I'm not kidding you.
Wait, what?
So, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. So, I don't know all the psychology behind it, but I do know with my second husband, he had a rough childhood. His dad was, abused his mother and was abusive. So he says, I don't know what is truth and what isn't. But when you have that, and when you have someone who's been through a lot of trauma at a young age, they build up all these protective layers of their self. And so they end up having a lot of different personalities and parts of themselves. And so over the years, he has just had so many protective layers trying to protect himself that he has become so many different people. And so I think it was just so easy for him to switch off one personality and become a completely different personality because he's been doing that his entire life.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that, 'cause I was just about to ask, like if they're able to hone all of these different people inside, I wonder what their childhood was like. Because sometimes, like you said, if they're in abusive homes and they don't know how to cope with, they're seeing their mother abused and seeing them fighting, sometimes like you said, you create these walls, right? So if you're doing that, but you're doing it in layers, that's scary, and it's dangerous. You know what I mean? Like, it's dangerous.
Oh,
I don't understand
it totally is.
What about your
But
first?
it's just a way for them to protect themselves, and that's why it's called like these protective self layers. So my first husband actually came from a very stable home, a very
It's okay.
We go to the gym, Mom.
a very good family. I mean, his parents are still married. I'm very close to his parents.
Oh wow.
In fact, he disowned his parents because his parents wouldn't get rid of me.
I'll say wanted to control them as
And
well.
he came from a good family. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, but his dad's a psychiatrist, and his parents are very healthy people, and they knew
How
what he was
ironic is
doing,
that?
and they wouldn't put up with it. And so sorry about this. I told them to stay in their bedroom.
Boys don't listen. It's okay. I have 3 of them. I get it.
Yeah, I have 3 too. 3 boys.
Me too.
And so, oh, nice. Love boy moms.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, I did tell them to stay in their room, but I just have short attention span, apparently.
Yes, we do. Yes, they do.
Yeah. So, my first husband, I didn't notice anything. My friends would notice things like, oh, Stephany, they put you on this pedestal. They do all of this. But I didn't notice anything until I went to law school, because when I went to law school, all my focus now that was on him was on law school. I mean, I had 5 classes, and lots of reading, lots of cases, lots of briefing and internships and all this stuff. And so we went from 3 years of me just being able to focus all my attention on him and him just loving it until all my attention is focused on law school. And so he looked outside of the marriage for love, acceptance, admiration, because they need that supply. And so he wasn't getting it from me anymore. And so he had to go seek it out, the validation. And so for many years, that's what he did. He was constantly chatting with women, constantly. I don't know if there were physical meetups. I worked a lot. Then I had to travel. And so I traveled for a while. And so he eventually left. The discard for us was he just walked out one day and said he wants to go pursue a relationship with another married woman who also, right? We were all in the same church group.
Are you freaking kidding me?
So, I mean, and that's the hard thing too, is because, okay, here he is, he's the leader in the church, he's leading these groups, he's doing all of this. And it's like, you are not a good person. You do not practice what you preach. You are pretending. And so I didn't even go to church because I'm like, this is so stupid. Why? You don't, one, I don't like church, but 2, you go to church, but you don't even follow your beliefs. Like, it was just bizarre. And, when he left, of course I was devastated, but at the same time, I was like, I'm done. I'm so
Yeah.
done.
Yeah. But you know what, Stephany, I learned, I actually said this to one of my other guests. Sometimes things don't happen. I'm not even gonna say sometimes things don't happen to us, they happen for us. He did you a favor by doing that. Because with you going to law school, he should have been supporting you instead of looking elsewhere. Like that's what married couples do. If you feel that you want to go and better yourself, that's ultimately better in the relationship. That's better in your household. That's better in the future of your children. There's the support there. And if he felt that you were lacking in the romance part or the attentive part, that's what grown-ups do. We have conversations, right? You converse about this. You don't
absolutely right.
Take it. Yeah, like you don't just go out and mess with another married man, but just even that's a whole mess. And that's never going to work for them ever, because number one, the way that they started. And then you have the church involved in a sense too. So God will never bless that. She's probably miserable.
I know.
She's miserable. So he did you a favor, girl.
Well, he did. And, because you do talk about mental health on your podcast, he actually committed suicide last month. We had been separated and divorced for 6 years.
Okay.
And he continued to use the legal system and finances to further his abuse towards me, just filing frivolous motion after frivolous motion after frivolous motion, attempting to alienate my children from me, like all of this stuff. But you know what? Life catches up. Your lies, your deceptions, your untruths, they catch up. Shame,
Yes,
guilt, leading a double life, it catches up to you.
Absolutely.
And in the end, it caught up with him. And it's horrible. It's sad. It's like, become aware and heal and work on yourself. Don't just end it.
Right. Did he give an indication why he did that?
We didn't have a relationship. I had to completely cut him off. And so our only relationship consisted of texting about the kids. We did not, when he left, you don't get closure. We never had a final anything. The only thing I got was in May, he called me randomly out of the blue, crying and telling me he regretted leaving me. He still loved me. And he's remarried.
To the lady from the church?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They don't change. They don't.
I told you, I didn't know that. I know you mentioned that one of your husbands had died by suicide, but I, for some reason, thought it was the second husband. So I was completely shocked when you said the first one, because I'm like, oh, girl, he's not happy anyway. And then I didn't know. But you see, he reached out to you and he told you, I'm not happy. I made a mistake. And he made his bed, he needed to lie in it, right? Because he could have avoided that. He made a choice.
Exactly.
To go there. He thought the grass was greener when all he had to do was water his own grass.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And his mom told me this, that when he left, he told his mom that, haven't you always wondered if the grass is greener on the other side? And his mom was like, don't go, don't do it.
And look at what happened.
Yeah.
He thought happiness was there. And what people don't realize, happiness is within, right? So when you're genuinely happy with yourself, you want to share your happiness with your partner. And when your partner is not adding to the happiness that you feel you deserve, you owe it to them to have a conversation. He lacked in that regard severely. And I'm not trying to talk ill will about him, especially knowing that he's no longer here, but I'm just talking about the behavior. Like at some point you have to grow up. Little boys do that. They peek over the fence and be like, oh, that grass is greener. you don't know what somebody's doing inside the house. You don't know what kind of pesticides they use. You don't know if they're using chemicals on their water. Like, you just don't know. You're looking on the outside in, and you're willing to leave your family for what looks good. But God, sometimes when you make poor choices, God will let you see. You want to keep knocking on that door, go ahead. He's going to let you open it, and he's going to show you that what you thought was incorrect, and now you have to suffer because of the poor choices that you made and the devastation he left on you and your children, right? So
absolutely. Yeah. No, but you know what? When he attempted first, and then a month later he followed through with it. And so, but I was the one that had to talk to the kids about it.
Yeah.
He never, after he did his first attempt, he never talked to the kids. He never did anything. I had to sit them down, and when he died, I seriously felt this huge burden lift because I was no longer the target of his abuse. And again, it wasn't physical. It was through the courts. It was through the finances. It was emotional, psychological.
Yeah.
And a couple hours after he died, you know what my 9-year-old tells me? He says, "Mom, we can go travel the world now." And that is a 9-year-old's way of saying we are free.
That is amazing. Like, that just gave me goosebumps. Like, because kids know, they pay attention to every single thing. And your mom, like, boys are very
they know more than we think. Yep. They pay more attention than what we think they know. And I also have been open with them, in a way that they understand and at their level. But if things would come up, I would sit them down and talk to them. We do not treat people this way. We do not speak this way. My second husband was very much a toxic masculinity. That is so damaging to boys.
It is.
And so, and it's like I would constantly have to sit my boys down and correct behaviors, correct things, words, and say, no, look, we don't do this. And so, I know it is controversial because some people choose to try to hide everything from their kids as a way of protecting them. But a lot of times that backfires. I've seen it with so many people.
It's because they see it. They pay attention. Like the times that, the parents think that the kids are sleeping, they're actually not sleeping because they can't sleep because they hear the argument, and they have this fear of mom being hurt by dad. I know that because I grew up in a similar household. You know what I mean? But that one was physical, emotional, psychological, the whole shebang. And there was nights that I just could not sleep. There was times I didn't want to go to school because I was afraid of what was going to happen to my mother while I was, in school. So hiding it from them is non-conducive to anything. I think what you did was best was, kind of like not really keeping them apprised, but just kind of letting them know, like, all right, this is what it is, but you are still within boundaries, right? So talking to your kids, you open up that line of communication with them to say, listen, I'm not trying to hide this from you. This is what it is. Daddy he's going through some things. He may need therapy, or however you describe it, right? But keeping it from them is just because they take it on when you do that. When
they do.
They adopt it and they make it theirs, and now it becomes their problem. You know what I mean? So that was a really good way that you handled it.
Yeah, and so I've always have been open and honest, and that's why my 9-year-old says, "Mom, we can go travel the world now," because we are truly free now.
That's so. Was he doing all this with the courts when he was with the new wife?
Yep. And she was something else too. I don't really know her that well, but she definitely, after going to the funeral and and some other things that have come up, and just how I think she's a narcissist too. And you know what is I'm not kidding. I am not. The funeral was the most bizarre funeral I've ever been to. And I mean, I haven't been to many funerals, but it was all about her. It wasn't even about his life. It was about, I am serious. I am serious. Like, so many people came up afterwards and was like, what the heck did we just sit through? And I'm just like, I don't even know. I don't even know. No, but it's like it was bizarre, like truly bizarre. And you know, I'm just glad that they are just no longer a part of my life. And you know, and but that's what's hard too, you know, when you get tangled up with the narcissist, it's never completely over.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, he called me after 6 years, no closure. 6 years later, he calls me. Then a couple of months later, he commits suicide, you know? And so but it still is, you know, one of my friends said, well, that's the final manipulation. You know, I don't know what it was.
I can see that as well.
Yeah. And so, you know, it's just people learn from me. You know, you have to be able to see the lessons. And for so long, I was stuck in that victimhood. People would say, Stephany, don't you see the lessons? I'm like, no, there's no lessons out here because I didn't do anything wrong. And how many of us say that? I didn't do anything wrong, so how could there be lessons? But you know, when I was able to make that shift and let go of my victim story and become the hero of my story, I got out a journal and I said, okay, if these two ex-husbands are not monsters, but if they are teachers sent to me to teach me some very, very tear-filled, painful lessons, then what did I learn? And so I made my list and I went through, okay, my first husband, his name was Josh. Josh, thank you for showing me that I need boundaries because I did not have boundaries in our marriage. I had boundaries for him and for all the women who were trying to get with him. I had boundaries for them. And I was the best boundaries police ever. And but you can't do that. You have to have boundaries for you.
Yeah.
Because that's what a boundary is, you know? And so I can say, thank you, Josh, for showing me that I need firm boundaries in my life. And I could go to husband number 2. His name is Jace. This is crazy. They were both Aquarius. Jace, Josh, they almost looked alike.
I'm an Aquarius. I'm offended. Apparently. How are they Aquariuses? We don't act like that. We don't act like that. What happened with them?
I don't know.
That's a whole nother topic, but okay.
I have a thing for Aquarius. So they're yeah. They're like my best friends. They're my boyfriends. They're my, you know, love Aquarius. I gotta like, get them out of my life. So I could say, you know, husband number 2, Jason, even though I went into the marriage with boundaries, he kept pushing at my boundaries. And so, and I kept moving them and moving them and moving them. That's not a boundary if you are constantly moving it. It's like a child, you know, those child playpens that you can constantly move. That's what I was doing. And so I can say, thank you. Both marriages, I learned the hard truths about boundaries. I can go back to husband number 1, Josh, and say, thank you for showing me that I'm worthy of so much more. Amen. And I don't like to say deserving, because deserving means we did something for something. I did this, so I deserve that. Worthy is innate. We are worthy because it is who we are.
Yes.
And so I could go back and say, thank you, Josh, for showing me that I am worthy of so much more. Thank you, Jason, for showing me I'm worthy of so much more. And when you can make that shift and see them as teachers here to bring you some very hard truths and hard lessons, then I was able to forgive them. Then I was able to have compassion for them. And, forgiving is it's not for them, it's for you.
Yes,
And I was
100%.
able to release all of that and let that anger go, because I don't want to be this bitter person who is angry that life isn't fair. I had these 2 horrible marriages and all these things happened to me. But now I can say, no, I learned some very hard, painful truths and lessons, and I have broken these patterns in my life. And that's why I share my story, because there are so many of us who are still stuck in that victim mindset. But there
Yes.
really is true freedom when you let it go, and when you flip the script, flip the lens, and see these people as teachers, learn the lessons, know what needs to be healed, what needs to be released, what needs to be let go, and let it go, break those lessons, and find true freedom. And that is something, it took 17 years, but I found true freedom. And
I
and
applaud you. I applaud
yay.
you. That is so amazing. It's empowering. It's encouraging. And like you said, everything is a choice. You can either choose to be victim, or you can choose to go from victim to warrior, right? Because again, things don't happen
Yes,
to us, they happen for us. And if it took you 25 years, it doesn't matter. You still learned the lesson that God wanted you to learn. And I think maybe that's why you got husband number 2, because maybe the lesson wasn't learned in the beginning, right? But you have to go through some things sometimes,
absolutely.
right? Like you have to go through some things
Mm-hmm.
sometimes in order to get it. Like the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result, right? So sometimes God
Exactly.
will make us go in what's that guinea pig or a gerbil wheel
Hamster
or
wheel. The hamster
yeah,
wheel. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
Stephany, thank you. He'll let us keep going until we're like, okay, all right, so something's not right here. You know what I mean? So people are cruel, people are narcissistic, people are mean spirited. I 100% agree with that. But like you said, the irony is now you're a much better person. You set your boundaries and you're unapologetic about the boundaries that you
Mm-hmm.
set. You're a much better woman now
Absolutely.
because you know that you're worthy of a certain love and certain behaviors. You're no longer tolerable to little boys in men bodies, right? So we
Yes.
evolve, and it takes us time sometimes, and going through it is never fun. It's freaking detrimental sometimes. Like it's insane going through the motions
Mm-hmm.
of your growing pains, basically. But at the end of it, it feels amazing. It feels absolutely amazing. And I know your
Yes.
freedom feels amazing. Your boys can breathe and they can sleep at night without concern or worry. You know what I mean? And that is what matters.
Yes.
The harmony that comes
Yes.
from expression,
Exactly.
right?
Yes. Absolutely. All of that. And
Wow, Stephanie.
so, yeah, just for the listeners, like there is freedom for you too. We
Yes, it
don't
is.
have to be stuck in this cycle going nowhere. We can have true
Absolutely.
freedom.
Absolutely. If you choose to, because we all have
Yes.
choices.
Yes.
We all have choices. You choose to stay. I mean, everybody has their breaking point, but if you're staying in something to that magnitude, take notes, take lessons, ask God why, or not why, but ask God what lesson, what are you supposed to be learning? As Stephany said, journal, write it down. God said, write it down, make it plain. Sometimes you seeing it on paper,
Mhm.
like give you a dose of reality, because sometimes when it's all swarming in our head, it's just too much in there. So when you write it down, you free up space. You free up space to become able to listen actively, and it also allows you to become proactive. So sometimes you need that something that's going to get your emotions and your thoughts and your feelings out. So then you can become clear in what you need to do and how you need to do it. But Stephany, I thank you so much for being on. Like, your story was amazing.
Yes.
You are amazing. I love it. Like, congratulations for getting your law degree, even though you were going through some things. That just goes to speak to the type of woman that you are. You're dedicated, you're motivated. And although you feel like you didn't set boundaries, you still was strong enough to proceed with doing what you wanted to do with your life. And that takes an astronomical amount of time, because if you were weak minded, he could have prohibited you from doing that as well. So I'm just like, I love it. I'm pro women. Like, let's go. Don't let nobody tell you that. Yes.
Yes.
Like,
Right.
I love it. I love it. But somebody's going to see this and it's going to resonate. Even if it doesn't apply to them, I'm sure they know someone who's going through it, and they can, tell them, like, listen, hey, you need to listen to this podcast because, somebody was going through this too. And look at how she came out. And because sometimes you can't see the end. You know what I mean? But when you're in it, it's hard to see.
Sometimes
yeah.
No, it's absolutely true. But it will get better. It does get better. You can break the trauma bond that keeps you connected. I go back sometimes and read through my old journals, and it's heartbreaking to read. But I have grown and I've come to a completely different place in my life. And it happened to me. It will happen to you.
Yep. And sometimes going back, reading something that you were going through at that moment, it gives you the motivation to keep going. And it also allows you to measure how much you've elevated since that moment. So there's nothing wrong with going back, so you can see how far you've come, because that's going to keep pushing you smooth ahead. I have no doubt, Stephany, that you are going to continue to do great things. Keep telling your story. Keep being inspiring, because you never know. Even if it's one person, you're doing your job, because God doesn't take us through these things to keep them to ourselves. He allows us to sustain so we can help other people, right? So, yeah.
Yes, and I say that all the time. I'm like, I did not go through all of this to keep it inside. I went through all of this, and so I will shout it from the rooftops and from every podcast and from every book, because I'm not keeping all this trauma to myself. It was horrible, and it was bought at a very high price.
Yes.
My tears and my struggles. And so, no, I'm giving it all away for free.
Absolutely. I love it. And people are going to keep coming back for it too, Stephany. I guarantee it. You are amazing. I would love to have you back, sometime in the near future. But I wish you well. Again, I have no doubt that you're going to continue to be amazing. You're a boy mom, so I know you're super duper strong. I love it. So thank you so much, Stephany.
Love the boys. You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you on the next Mind Map.